The first time I held Avon, she was swaddled in a hospital blanket still damp from the storm that had knocked out power in half the county. The nurses said she was unlucky, born during thunder, on the very day my father died. My daughter Delia, still groggy from labor, turned her face to the wall and whispered, "She brings endings." 3 days later, Delia was gone. She left a note, something about needing to find herself and how she was never meant to be a mother. I found it tucked between the diaper bag and the discharge papers. No phone call. No forwarding address. Just me, a newborn, and silence. They called Avon a burden. Said she'd curse every house she entered. My sister refused to hold her. My uncle said she'd drain my life. But I saw none of that. When Avon gripped my finger with her impossibly tiny hand, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Purpose. They saw a curse. I saw a second chance. We built a life out of bedtime stories and hand-me-down onesies. I sang her to sleep with old folk lullabies and told her the thunder was just the sky clapping for her bravery. Every time she smiled, the room warmed. Every scraped knee, every spilled cup, she always ran to me first. And when she called me Mama for the first time unprompted, my heart ached in places I didn't know were still soft. We made it 5 full years, 5 birthdays, 5 winters with paper snowflakes taped to foggy windows. I taught her how to hold a spoon, write her name, braid her own hair. I thought we were safe. But then Delia came back. She stood at my door with papers in her hand and courtroom confidence in her voice. "She's my daughter," she said, "and I'm ready to take her home." I didn't argue. I looked at Avon, her small hand gripping the hem of my shirt, and felt the fracture begin. I kissed her forehead like it was a promise I was breaking, and I let her go. It was Avon's 5th birthday when Delia showed up, uninvited, unannounced, and unnervingly calm. She stood on my porch in a tailored coat I didn't recognize and heels too sharp for our gravel path. In one hand, she held a wrapped gift with a pink bow. In the other, a manila folder. I hadn't seen her in nearly 5 years. Avon was inside, pressing cookie cutters into dough and singing to herself. I stepped outside, closing the door behind me. Delia didn't ask to come in. Instead, she said, "I've been in therapy. I'm ready now." She smiled like it meant something. "She's my daughter. It's time I take responsibility." I opened the folder. Custody forms. A drafted parenting plan, her signature already scrawled at the bottom. "I want her back," she said. "I found a great school near me. There's a child psychologist she can work with." I even made space in my guest room, turned it into a little garden nook. "She'll love it." My pulse pounded in my ears. "She doesn't know you," I said. "She will. And if you don't agree, I'll take it to court." I looked into her face, the same one I'd kissed goodnight for 18 years, and saw nothing familiar, just determination and fear, maybe, but not for Avon, for herself. "I'm not trying to be cruel," she added, her voice softening. "But you're not her mother. You're her grandmother. Start acting like it." The words lodged in my chest like a splinter. Inside, Avon giggled. The timer on the oven dinged. "She's baking her own cake," I said quietly. "She'll have more help where I'm taking her." I could have fought, hired a lawyer, called the judge I used to volunteer with. But I knew what custody battles did to children. I'd seen it growing up. I didn't want her memory of turning 5 to include depositions and courtrooms. That night, after everyone sang happy birthday, I packed a small suitcase for her 2 favorite dresses, her storybook with the bent spine and the stuffed raccoon she'd named Henry. She clung to my hand until Delia promised they'd come visit. They didn't. The car pulled away, and I stood alone in the driveway, with frosting still on my hands and a quiet that didn't feel like peace. From that day forward, I waited for the phone to ring. For photos. For any sign that Avon was okay. And for almost 2 years, all I got was silence. The first few weeks, I kept my phone at my side like a lifeline. I checked it in the middle of the night just in case Delia sent a photo or a quick update. Avon brushing her teeth, reading a new book, smiling in a school uniform. But there was nothing. When I did get something, it was carefully curated. A filtered snapshot of Avon with a birthday balloon, her smile strained. Once a blurry video of her in a recital, but I couldn't hear her voice over the background music. Every call was scheduled, every conversation supervised. Delia's voice lingered in the background like a warning. "She's adjusting," she'd say if I asked too much. "She's fine." I tried to believe her. I didn't visit. I didn't push. I reminded myself this was the agreement. Delia had custody. I was the grandmother now. I had to respect the new order of things. Still, each time I sent the mortgage payment, I paused. The house Delia lived in was the same one I bought after her divorce, signed under my name, though no one talked about it. It was supposed to be a safety net. A fresh start, not a cage. 2 years passed like that, quiet, hollow. The kind of silence that scrapes at your bones. Then one Saturday morning, I woke up before dawn and sat in the kitchen, holding a mug I didn't remember making. I watched the sun hit the porch, and something shifted in me. Not anger, not fear, just a pull. I grabbed my keys. I didn't change out of my cardigan. I didn't call. I didn't knock. I just followed instinct. The drive was long enough to question myself, but not long enough to turn back. The road bent through neighborhoods I used to walk with Avon on her scooter. The closer I got, the louder something inside me became. I pulled into the driveway and turned off the engine. For a second, everything was still. Then I heard it through the window, clear and sharp. "Wash the dishes properly, you useless girl." And just like that, the silence was over. The voice that tore through the window didn't sound unfamiliar, but it did sound foreign. Sharp clipped, laced with something colder than frustration. "Wash the dishes properly, you useless girl." I froze on the porch. My hand was still resting on the car door, the weight of the keys heavy in my palm. For a moment, I wondered if I had misheard, if maybe it wasn't Delia, if it wasn't Avon. But then I heard it again. Can't even clean a plate right. I walked to the door, pushed it open without knocking. No one heard me come in. The living room lights were off, but the TV flickered in the corner, tuned to some cartoon. Corey, Delia's son, was on the couch, feet-up bowl of cereal in his lap, laughing at the screen. He didn't look toward the kitchen. He didn't flinch, but I did. Delia stood at the sink, arms crossed, towering over Avon. My granddaughter was on a step stool, hands deep in soapy water. A sponge slipped from her grip and clattered into the basin. She reached for it quickly, but Delia's voice cracked down again. "Look at this mess. Did no one teach you basic sense?" Avon didn't speak. Her back was hunched, her tiny shoulders pulled in like she was trying to disappear inside herself. No one saw me yet, and for a split second, I didn't move. I couldn't. I just stood there, watching the child I had rocked to sleep, now tremble under the weight of her mother's disdain. I said, "Rinse them properly." Delia barked again. "Corey doesn't leave grime on everything." I looked at Corey. He hadn't moved. Not a blink. Not a pause between spoonfuls. I stepped forward and the wood beneath my feet creaked. Delia turned. "Oh, you're here." Her tone didn't change. No apology. No surprise. We were just teaching her. She needs to learn responsibility. "Teaching," I said quietly. "Is that what this is?" Avon looked up then. Her eyes found mine. Wide, full of questions she was too afraid to ask. But there was no relief. She didn't run to me. She didn't smile. She just blinked and turned back to the sink. I walked closer, stopping a foot behind Delia. "This isn't teaching," I said. "It's breaking." Delia shrugged. "Don't be so emotional, Mom. Kids need structure. Discipline. Avon dropped a plate. It clinked against the edge and spun before settling. Her hands were shaking. And I realized something I didn't want to. Delia had become the very thing I spent years shielding her from. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't plead. I turned and walked out the door. Back in the car, I picked up my phone and dialed the one person who had never asked questions when I signed checks. Mr. Grisham at the bank. I went back the next day. Not to argue. Not to confront. Just to watch. Delia didn't question my sudden interest. She assumed guilt had brought me back. That I regretted walking out. That I'd come to apologize. She poured me tea and talked about how sensitive Avon could be. How dramatic she got over simple things. I didn't respond. I watched. Corey spilled juice on the rug. Delia laughed, ruffled his hair, handed him a paper towel and another juice box. When Avon asked for water, she was handed a cracked plastic cup and told, "Don't make a mess this time." Later, Avon sat on the floor, drawing with a pencil worn to the wood. She held up her picture, a treehouse with 3 figures inside and one standing alone below. Delia glanced at it. "You've got to stop drawing such depressing things. Be normal for once." Corey shoved a toy at her and Avon flinched. Delia didn't notice. Or maybe she did and didn't care. I sat on the edge of the couch and watched the pieces slide into place. It wasn't new. It was a pattern. One I had known all too well. When I was Avon's age, my mother used to call me the heavy one, while Delia was our little spark. I was told to clean, to wait to behave. Delia was told to shine. And now my daughter was doing the same thing to her own. Favoritism disguised as structure. Shame dressed up as discipline. Avon wasn't failing. She was being chipped away one cold glance at a time. I looked at the house, the polished floors, the matching curtains. I helped choose the photo of Delia and Corey on the wall with no sign of Avon. It wasn't a home. It was a hierarchy. And some cycles don't end unless someone ends them loudly. I stood up, walked to the kitchen, and poured myself a glass of water. Tomorrow, I would make another call. Not to Delia. Not to Avon's school. This time, it would be to someone who remembered whose name was on the deed. Mr. Grisham answered on the second ring. He always did. "Maribel," he said warmly. "You haven't called in a while. I didn't waste time. Is the mortgage on the Glenmere property still under my name?" He tapped at his keyboard. "Yes, ma'am. Same arrangement since 2016. Auto pay from your personal checking. Would you like to update anything I exhaled through my nose? Cancel the auto pay." A pause. "You sure I'm sure?" He didn't press, just nodded on the other end. "Grace period will expire in 10 days. If it goes unpaid, we'll have to move forward with standard proceedings." "Do what you need to do," I said. I hung up. No rage, no drama, just clarity. For years, Delia had lived under the illusion of independence. She walked through that house like it was her throne, feet up, voice-raised rules barked out like commandments, but she never read the fine print. The crown she wore was mine, the down payment mine, the mortgage mine. Even the garden stones she arranged into a fake Zen path had been hauled in by a contractor I paid for in cash. She thought cruelty made her powerful. I reminded her who built the floor beneath her feet. I didn't call to warn her. I didn't send a text or leave a note. She would find out when the emails bounced, the notices arrived. The quiet threat of foreclosure started to hum in the background of her carefully curated life. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't spite. It was gravity. Because when you treat the home you were given as a weapon, don't be surprised when the foundation gives out. I folded the last bill from the mail pile and set it aside. The silence in the kitchen felt different now. Not heavy, not empty. Just still. 10 days. That's how long she had to realize the difference between owning a house and being given one. And while she scrambled for footing, I planned the next step, one that didn't include giving warnings to people who didn't deserve them. It took 3 days. On the third morning, just after I poured my second cup of coffee, my phone lit up with Delia's name. I let it ring twice before I answered. "Mom," she said, voice sharp with panic. "Did the bank call you too? We got some kind of notice. It says the mortgage payment was missed. That can't be right." "There's no mistake," I said. "I stopped paying." The line went silent. "For how long?" "Forever." She inhaled sharply. "You can't just do that. This is my house." "No," I said. "It's mine. You just live in it." Another pause. I could almost hear her mind racing, flipping through excuses, hunting for the version of me who used to back down. "But the kids I interrupted don't include the one washing dishes while you scream at her." She hung up. By noon, the rest of them started circling. Aunt Neva called first, her voice syrupy with concern. "Maribel, sweetheart, you're letting this get too far." "Family is family. I'm not destroying family," I replied. "I'm removing rot." Then came Cousin Evelyn, who hadn't called in years. She asked if I'd lost it, said Delia was trying her best. I asked if she knew how Avon was being treated. She didn't answer. They screamed over a house but stayed silent over a girl's tears. None of them had called when Avon stopped appearing in family photos. No one checked in when her name vanished from holiday cards. But now that the walls were trembling now, they cared. The louder they got, the calmer I became. Delia messaged again that evening. "You're punishing us for nothing. You're making us homeless." I didn't reply, because I knew the truth they refused to say out loud. They were never worried about the girl. Only the crown. The appearance. The comfort they confused with control. But appearances don't pay mortgages. And comfort, when built on the back of a child's fear, deserves to collapse. So I let the silence speak for me. And the next morning, I opened a drawer, pulled out a manila envelope, and called my lawyer. We didn't bring a siren. Just a signature. My lawyer, Ms. Hart, walked beside me up the cracked steps of the house I once paid for in full. She held the envelope like a surgeon carrying a scalpel, precise, unflinching, ready to cut only what needed to be removed. Delia answered the door in a bathrobe, mascara smudged beneath one eye. She blinked at the papers, read the first few lines, and laughed, the kind of laugh that tries too hard not to sound nervous. "You're joking," she said. "You're trying to take her from me." "I'm not trying," I said. "I've already filed." She scanned the form again. Neglect. Emotional harm. Violation of a verbal custodial agreement. The words hit harder than I expected, not just because they were true, but because they were final. She glanced over her shoulder as if looking for someone to back her up, but the house was quiet. Corey was at school. Avon was upstairs, probably folding something too carefully, or brushing her hair the number of times she'd been told was neat. Delia didn't argue. She signed. No tears, no shouting, no last-minute repentance. Just a hollow nod as Ms. Hart collected the documents and stepped aside. I climbed the stairs slowly. Avon was sitting cross-legged on her bed. Henry the raccoon tucked beneath her chin. Her small suitcase sat in the corner, zipped already. I didn't ask who packed it. I knelt beside her, ready to come home. She didn't speak, just slid off the bed, one hand still wrapped around her stuffed animal, the other slipping into mine. She didn't ask where we were going. She didn't ask if Delia would be mad. She didn't ask anything at all. She just held my hand like she'd been waiting. We walked past the photo wall on the way out. Still no picture of her. Just smiling frames of Corey vacations she'd never been invited to, birthdays she probably spent doing dishes. I didn't say goodbye. Delia didn't follow us out. We stepped into the sunlight like it owed us something, and I knew this time I wasn't walking away from a fight. I was walking home with everything that mattered. The new place wasn't fancy. 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, creaky floors that sang when the wind shifted. But it had sunlight. It had quiet. And it had room for a garden, which was all Avon asked for. She chose the seeds herself, marigolds, zinnias, snapdragons, bright things with loud names. Every morning, she watered them with a humming tune I didn't recognize, but I never asked her to stop. Her song filled the corners, the silence used to haunt. She didn't ask about Delia. Not once. She didn't flinch when I dropped a glass in the sink. Just turned from her drawing and said, "I think we have another one in the cabinet." She ate slowly now, chewed without rushing. Reached for second helpings and sometimes thirds. She started sleeping with the door half open, the hallway light off. No more whispering in her sleep. No more curling into herself like she was waiting for the sound of footsteps. She painted every afternoon. At first, girls alone under cloudy skies. Then girls in bright clothes under open ones. She never explained what they meant, and I never asked. One morning, I watched her kneel by the marigolds and gently sweep dirt from the base of a blooming stem. Her hair caught the light. Her shoulders were relaxed, and I realized I didn't rescue her. I simply returned her to herself, the part of her they had buried under cracked cups and cold stares. The girl I once rocked in my arms was still there, just waiting for a place to grow again, and as her humming turned to quiet singing, I walked back inside and poured us both a glass of lemonade. She didn't notice, but that was the point. She didn't have to anymore. The text came late, just after dusk. "You've destroyed this family." I stared at the screen for a moment, then typed back slowly. "You destroyed yourself the day you screamed at a 5-year-old and called it parenting." Then I blocked her. One by one, I did the same to the rest. No explanations. No dramatic exits. Just silence. The kind they never knew how to sit with. The house sold quicker than expected. The listing agent said it was a hot property. Funny how quickly people line up for a home built on someone else's hurt. I didn't attend the auction. Delia didn't reach out again. Avon's birthday came 2 weeks later. We baked together her choice chocolate with sprinkles in the batter. I let her crack the eggs. She didn't ask where her mother was. Didn't glance at the door. Didn't pause when we lit the candles. She just laughed and said, "This is the best one yet." We invited Sylvie from next door, Ms. Hart from the firm, and Avon's art teacher, who brought a sketchbook wrapped in gold paper. We ate outside under string lights I hung the night before, and when it got dark, we chased lightning bugs. No one came to ruin the moment. No one made her small. And as I tucked her in that night, her hair still smelling like icing and grass, I realized we hadn't just left that house. We'd erased the map that led to it.